All right, we're live. Welcome everyone. Welcome plinq. This is a developer interview that I had the pleasure to do with plinq. Welcome plinq to the stream. It's our first time in a call. Even though
Mhm.
we have talked a lot in the past, this is our first time actually being in a call together. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So for those of you who are still living under a rock, I will let plinq introduce himself for who he is and what he does on the lore team.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a senior game designer on Lore. I work almost entirely on cards. I've been on Lore for 2 or 3 years. Boy, I don't know. I think three. The time I was contracting, and then I
Ooh.
got a job after that.
Mhm.
Uh, I worked on a lot of different champions. So some of the champions I helped develop were Akshan. I did a little work on Gwen. I did a lot of work on the cultist package for Varus and Kane. Uh, and I recently worked on Nidalee, and worked on the ambush package. So that was also something that I drove. Although, as with everything in our, in our lore, it's like everybody got their hands on everything. So when I say I did it, it's just like I was the one proposing, and other people were helping shape the answers. But it's almost
Mhm.
always a big team effort for
Hey,
everything that we made.
nah, it's all you, man. I also
Yeah.
heard you made Jace.
Oh, you did make Jace, yeah. Yeah, I made Jace. That's true.
Jace is a
Uh,
very cool champion. Speaking of which,
yeah.
let's start let's start like outside of lore.
Okay.
Because like I would like to humanize you. Like we talk a lot about developers, and like I think it's great that the lore team has been very like approachable to the community. So like
Yeah.
let's remind everyone that there are humans working there. Like sometimes people go over the line when giving feedback, especially when like devs go for feedback, like they talk to the community.
Mhm.
So like tell us a little bit about how you joined Riot Games and like what brought you to LOR.
So, I'd been working on a game, and then prior to Lore, and it was a very small company, and I was the lead designer for that. I also did narrative stuff for that. But when COVID happened, they were a startup, and so all their funding just dried up almost instantaneously. So I was sort of out of a job,
Mm-hmm.
and I game design jobs are not common, especially for card designers. So I thought I would look around, see what I could find. And then right around that time, I saw that Lore had come out. And I had known and worked with the person who was at that time leading the project, Andrew Yip. And so
Oh.
I just reached out to Andrew. Yeah, so I knew Andrew, so
Mm-hmm.
so I had him in. So Andrew and I had both worked at Upper Deck, like on Versus and some other games.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached out to Andrew and I said, "Hey, you mind if I apply for this?" And this was for a contracting position. And I had always wanted to work at Riot, basically because uh, it's one of their model for free to play was one of the only ones that I didn't find toxic. Like it's actually like a very healthy model. But Riot
Mm-hmm.
was in LA and I live in San Diego, so it wasn't. And my wife has a very good job down here in San Diego, so it wasn't a very easy thing for me to apply. But during COVID, I figured I could work remote. So I asked Andrew if he thought I should apply, and which I did. And so, and then I may not be qualified for a lot of work, but I am qualified for card designers. So I interviewed, I got that job, and I really, I also really loved the game when I tried it out. So which isn't true for me for a lot of TCGs. I don't actually love that many. So. That combination of things where I really like the game, and then I had deep trust for Andrew as a person. So that also encouraged me to apply. And then once I got here, I really, Riot's just been fantastic for me. It's a really great place to work. It's a great team. It's probably the first time I've been with this many good designers all on the same team. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll keep doing it as long as they let me, basically.
Yeah, I really connect with the feeling that like really liked LOR at first because I also like
Mhm.
lore is my first card game, and I come from League
Right,
of
right.
Legends, so like I was really drawn to the IP, and like I tried
Mhm.
Hearthstone, but it didn't work out for me because I'm from Brazil, and like buying booster packs is not a very good thing if you're
Yeah, I
Brazilian.
mean it's pretty stiff. I mean,
And I was very like I was already invested in the lore of Riot Games, and then
Right.
the approach for like monetization really got me in, and like I mostly quit League of Legends. Like lore made me quit League of Legends,
Oh
which
wow.
says a
Yeah.
lot because I've played League of Legends for like 10 years. But yeah,
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, I always just it's funny because you're such a natural card player. But yeah, yeah, no, it's a cool. The IP is really cool. So that's also really
yeah.
a
So
good.
like, I also want to ask: have you ever played League of Legends?
I have played League of Legends. I'm very bad at League of Legends. like like my Twitch. I probably could learn it. I'm actually really slow to learn any game
Oh,
that
you play
requires
Twitch?
dexterity. Oh no. I mean, by Twitch, I just mean my dexterity, like
Oh,
for
okay.
yeah. So like that kind of Twitch, yeah. So
Hmm.
like it's good for some things and not for others. There's a sort of very specific precision that I never was very good at League. And then yeah, so I played some, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's like me for FPS. I asked because like as a game developer, like you're
Mhm,
developing lore is derived from the League of Legends IP. So like you should,
mhm.
I assume they require you to like be at least familiarized with the IP. So
Oh
like,
yeah. Whenever I do it, work on anything, I look at all the leaked stuff, and then I also
mhm,
read up on the lore a lot. Because there's lots of stuff written. So it's like really like a lot of what we try to do when we're capturing this is to stay either tight into the way the champ works in League for that kind of resonance, or tight into the lore. Optimally, as close as we can get to both, so that we can,
mhm.
so people can who like League or like League lore will find something really attractive in the champion. For me, one of the touchstones is like I just imagine the person who's like uh that's their favorite champ. Maybe that they're just a one trick with that champ. That's the only thing they ever play. And then we release this champion, and they're so excited that it comes out, and they see it, and they're sad. I'm like, oh, just
Yeah,
imagining that is so painful. So I really want to make sure that player gets paid off the most.
yeah.
I was working on a champion recently, and it turned out one of the engineers was actually well,
One
anyway.
trick.
Uh, yeah, it's really important to try to
Mhm.
catch up. You know,
Yeah, speaking for
yeah.
myself, I think the lore team does great because like I am a Jin one trick. I have like I played Jin for my whole life. Like
Oh,
since he came out, I played Jin, and like
mhm.
I hate Challenger playing Jin. I made a build that like the double A build. It was like worldwide famous and everything. Like
Oh wow.
I was really invested in that champion. I had the nickname Jin in the Brazilian server, and like I was really
Oh, that's
invested.
funny.
So when Jin was announced, I was stoked, and like I think the team
Uh,
does a great job at capturing these champions, like their identities and how they play out in League of
yeah.
Legends. And it's really like the same. I feel like I am playing Jin. So, like
That's good.
massive
That's good. Like
props.
I think we don't always hit it, but it's definitely something we're striving for. So yeah.
Hmm. Speaking of which,
Mhm.
how do you manage these expectations? Like when you're creating a card, like you mentioned you work mainly on card design, and
Yeah.
you've created a lot of champions that have a lot of personality. Like Jace has two modes, and Italy also has two modes. You did some
Mhm.
work on Samira. Auction is like a very in-depth champion, and Auction was released
Mhm.
in lore first, and
Mhm.
I think it was great. Like, how do you manage these expectations? Or like, I have to do good, or like I have to portray the champion. Uh,
Oh, like you mean in terms of like when it's coming out, like how do
yeah, like
I
like
yeah.
it's coming
I
out.
mean,
How do you manage the expectation, like or like public perception of the champions?
so it's interesting because I used to work on a lot of physical card games, and this was really before there was like all this like live streaming, Twitch. So we would release things, and we would know sales, and we might talk to people, but we wouldn't really get that sort of immediate feedback. So that was all extremely new to me.
Mhm.
And Laura's like has a bigger worldwide audience than any game I've ever worked on. So definitely it was very different. I've interacted with the community before on other games, but like it was, so like it's this is something that uh it has a risk of being nerve-wracking, and certainly I have like been like I hope it lands well. I hope people really like this. But the important thing I think for me when I'm thinking about these things is um it doesn't have to be that everyone's response is good, right? Like a lot of times when we have a champion, we're aiming at a specific group of players, like who have a certain play style. Maybe it's an aggressive champion, maybe it's someone
Mm-hmm.
who just really loves that champion from League, so we don't have to hit everybody with every card, as long as some group of people is made very happy and it gets a good play rate, and or certainly through live balance we're able to help it find its way to a decent play rate, and people so I think that's the kind of thing that makes it a lot easier to deal with, like sort of some some I guess fear of release. Fortunately most of my things have landed pretty well, so it hasn't been too bad for me. And our community is super nice, which also helps. Like I don't know how some
Mm-hmm.
like so some of these communities can be a lot more harsh than lore ever is.
Yes.
So I mean, Laura is the kiddie pool for dealing with the public. Like, so not, I mean, which is, in some ways, I think over time this has become clear to the devs on lore, and we've been able to stretch out a lot more, interact with the community, in part just because it's not it's everyone, the interactions are as a rule quite positive. So not everything has to be positive. you know I Criticisms often are also good to hear and understand.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like managing my own concerns with releasing things, a lot of it is just like you have to have some understanding. Not every card is going to be for everybody, and that helps a lot. As long as you're making one group of people very happy, and having some impact on the meta, like I think that's like a win for us. It's a win for me too. So that's all I really care
Yeah.
about. And that helps like manage it. Like if you saw one thing where someone didn't like a card, and that was like I closed my computer for the day. That would be a very short career.
Yeah. So, speaking of like designing champions, what comes
uh,
first, the design or like the decision of which champion? Like, do you come first? You,
so
you first come
so
up with a design,
yeah.
or like you have a champion that you need to do, and then you work on that. Like, what's the
Oh, it's
process?
interesting. Like it sort of goes both ways. I would say we more often we have champions that the team as a whole is wanting to do, um, uh, or that we're considering doing. And so, we'll talk with the other members of the team. We talk a lot with narrative, we talk with art. We sort of, come to some sort of group understanding of what we want to do. But in terms of the mechanics, sometimes the mechanics will come first, sometimes the champion will come first. I think it's slightly more common that the champion comes first. That it's slightly more common that uh we'll take someone like Jace, and we'll say, okay, this is Jace. What's going to make it feel like Jace? Like what sort of fits in with that. But a lot of times people will have designs in their back pocket. Like it's like you're maybe
Yeah.
you're not working at you have some things, you have some mechanics or some designs, and then you're like, someone will say, oh, this would be perfect for so and so, and maybe that's you who's working on it, or maybe it's someone else, and you're like, oh, that is interesting. So we have some design. Almost every designer has like a little sort of war chest of like designs that they're kind of hoarding up that we think would be fun in the game. And there's just some things that we hadn't done that much, that are kind of like obvious things that would probably work very well in lore,
Mm.
uh, that we wanted to try. And so usually so sometimes it goes that direction. Sometimes it's like you realize that uh, mechanics would be perfect for the champ, as opposed to you start with the champ and try to figure out what mechanics would work for lore. But it's just sort of whatever works, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of mechanics,
Mhm.
we've seen lore come up with like mechanics that are similar to other TCGs. Like we
Yeah,
have manifest in lore, which is very akin to discover in Hearthstone, and we have
right,
ambush in lore that's very akin to morph in Magic. So I've heard.
right.
I've never played Magic, but people told me all the time that it was basically morph. Like, is there a specific way to that like you translate these things into lore? Like, do you put your touch in it, or like do you? basically do every mechanic? Is there some mechanics that you can't do?
Well, I think there's some that wouldn't work as well because we have some constraints, like we can only go 6 wide, for example,
Mm-hmm.
on the board. So that constrains some mechanics. But but for things like ambush, so it's funny. Like, so I did ambush for the
Mm-hmm.
most part. I mean, obviously it was me and Brian working on that set, but I proposed it, and when I proposed it, interestingly, I had not heard of Morph, even though I played a ton of Magic. I hadn't been current, like I played it before, like that
Mm-hmm.
Morph was a thing, so I had no idea about it. But it turns out, generally speaking, if you make a mechanic, Magic's a 30-year-old card game.
Yeah.
It's like The Simpsons, there's always a Simpsons episode that has like the plot that you're trying to do, right? So,
Exactly.
so it turns out the mechanic I was doing was like 80% Morph. We're like, all right, fine, fine, fine. Let's look at what happened with Morph. And there's like in some ways it's kind of great because we can see from them what were their successes and failures. There's even like an article with their developers talking about the successes and failures and sort of what went into them. So like there was really interesting information.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, when we take a mechanic like that, we have to think about it in the context of lore. And the reason I was drawn to it initially was because of spell mana. I thought like spell mana kind of it lets you kind of cheat your sort of main mana a bit because you're using spell mana to summon your creature, so you can
Yeah.
stretch a summon across a couple turns. And I found this kind of an interesting way
Mm-hmm.
of doing the morph. Uh, for me, like a lot of times, actually, it's funny. Like there's some constraints about lore, relative to some other card games, like it's a mobile game, so at least in part, and so we have a limit to how many units we put in play or how many any type of permanent card we put in play. So that will affect things. But for me, I'm often looking for a way to use spell mana because I think it's one of our big differentiators. It's something where you're able to carry over this resource from turn to turn and sort of how you spend it and how you acquire it. I think when we look at other mechanics, for me, the ones that are often the most interesting to me are ones that would play pretty differently in lore because of spell mana. That's not the only thing I think any of us thinks about. And certainly, that might be peculiar to me, but it is one of the touch points for me. The joint turn structure is another, like things like that. So it's a lot of like there's tons and tons of card mechanics, right? So which of these work well digitally? Which of these can we do something really different digitally with it than you could do if it was like say a physical card game? You know, which of these suit like our overall like region pools, things like that. So there's like a lot of different things to think about. But it's fun if we can find like a new home for a mechanic with a different spin on it, from another card game, and see how well it lands. So I think that's whether we started that way or not. I didn't start that way, but I mean obviously we did look at it. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's basically what goes on with it. Like so it's like what would adapt well to our rules, and a lot of times we won't know that. Uh, Without playing. So it's a lot of it's just, you just test. You're like, oh, does this work? Is it interesting? Well, it doesn't work like that. Well, can we make it interesting another way?
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of playtesting. Speaking of playtesting, how,
Mhm.
how much auction master do you have?
Oh, it's funny that you asked this. Actually, not as much as you might think. Like, I have probably somewhere around 20,000. I think I haven't checked exactly. I think it's around 20. Actually, the champ I currently have the most mastery with is Nidalee. Um,
Oh.
so I have almost 50,000 with Nidalee.
No, but I mean like across all clients, uh, like playing
Oh, yeah, I
internally.
don't know. I only play Americas usually.
Mhm.
So I don't know about internally, probably more.
Yeah, I know you're the action enthusiast there.
Internally, you could triple that probably. I've got a lot internally.
uh,
And people make fun of me. People
for
make fun of
being
me.
the action enthusiast. If there's a champion, Plinks played with action.
That's Tyler making fun of me. Yeah, Brian
E-
Thurtle.
Speaking of
Yeah.
champions,
Uh-huh.
recently, like lore started like, of course, it was a different team, it was a different vision.
Right.
Lore started
Right.
where like champions were the only cards that would break region pie when like
Right.
design
Right.
happened. And like we've seen more cards break region pie recently, especially the explorers. Like they gave access. Every region has like access to landmark destruction, for example.
Yeah.
Whereas historically, some regions have worse action, like the worst to none access landmark destruction. But I think they're
Right. I
fine
mean,
because like they're in the
they have it, but
lightweight. Yeah, but like, oh, the team has like a limit to how much we're gonna break region pie.
yeah, there's definitely a limit. I mean, so here's like the like in a lot of ways, it wasn't just champions that broke region pie, but sometimes the whole mechanical package that broke region pie. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
like one, because I helped do a lot of the stuff for the rotation, and a lot of that was actually trying to pull it back in
Yeah,
from.
rotation
So
really helped that.
like and I understand the temptation. You want to capture, like Sivir, right? So suddenly you're doing some things in Noxus that you maybe shouldn't be doing. So, uh, so I guess one thing that sort of differentiates lore from other card games is we don't have a generic pool of cards. So, like, for example, in Magic, there's artifacts. I think Hearthstone has a generic. I haven't played Hearthstone a ton
Yeah,
of time. Hearthstone, I
Hearthstone
think, is a
has
generic.
neutral cards.
Yeah,
They're called
neutral
neutral
cards. So
cards.
many card games have neutral cards.
Mm-hmm.
So, what neutral cards usually provide is access to a lot of effects that you won't get in your specific pool,
Mm-hmm.
but at a bad rate. So in some ways, you can think of the explorers as effectively being that,
Mm-hmm.
more than anything else. And like so, and then if it seems like they're too good, which is just sort of a matter of like empirically how well are they doing on ladder, how much do they seem to be able to do their jobs. If it seems like they're too good, we'll probably pull them back a little because they are supposed to be more at that level of like generic goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Because so for a lot of times, like what a region is best at, what we want to do is like if you're best at that, you should have a lot of cards that do it, and you should also probably have the best cards that do it or the best rate of cards that do it. Um, so the explorers, like, we wouldn't want to keep printing tons of ways in for all these different regions to do all these things, but having one card that can do it kind of provides a bit of a like an outlet valve. So, like for example, let's say that there was briefly before we got to a live patch, um, like there was some deck that had a landmark that was way too dominant. What would happen would be is either people were playing that or they were playing the regions that could only beat that, right? Or they're just being frustrated. So
Mm-hmm.
like I think this provides like a little it provides a bit of an outlet for people to have some chance of dealing with it, even if it's not at a great rate,
Mm-hmm.
without like forcing them into, say, for example, Piltover and Zon to play Aftershock or something like that. Like so I think that's the idea behind them. It's a bit of an experiment. We're gonna watch their rate, but I think it's really, it's mostly just uh, trying to provide something like that generic pool of cards so that people can play whatever region and still feel like they have a chance, even if it's not like the best at it.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of regions, you mentioned you talked with Umbridge. He had like a great vision for the game. Like he was the first pro lead. So like, I wanted to ask you if you have some insight on like how did the team get to 10 regions specifically? Like the fact that we don't have
I
any
actually, so this
neutrals
this
or like
question I
is.
probably should have asked someone. I probably should have asked like someone who'd been on the team longer than me. I have no idea. I just knew that 10 was the goal when I got here. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like most of the time, like my my best answer is like people like fives and tens in life, because of I guess
Yeah.
fingers and toes. So I think when it wasn't five, it moved up to 10. I mean, it doesn't fit perfectly into League of Legends regions, right? You
Mm-hmm.
could have had, fewer, we could have do less, we could rotate. But I think, 10 is where we ended up. I think it's good, it's nice to have the diversity um for regions. 10 is a lot. like it's double magic. So it means that each individual region has to be a bit narrower in terms of the things that it's good at. Um, uh, but it also probably means that you have to bleed through some of the lesser things across the regions more, if that makes sense. Like
Hmm.
basically just like the explorers essentially. Like we can't cut you off completely, but the best rate stuff has to be, within a pretty narrow channel.
Got you. Um, so let's go a little bit to a different topic. Or let's talk about like card
Okay.
balance. You mentioned like if explorers are too good, then they're gonna be toned down. So
Right.
like um, I think you've worked before on life balance patches.
Yeah, no, I did a lot of live balance actually.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like
I was initially hired for live balance, weirdly.
hmm I wanted to ask for before like, of course like the whole team has a vision for life balance, but like
Mhm.
every developer has their little touch. Like sometimes I think
Yeah.
you can feel that a patch or like a set was led by someone just looking at
Yeah.
the cards. So like um
Yeah, definitely,
y-
definitely.
uh
We all have our style for this. Yeah.
so like what's your vision when like you do a balance patch? How do you
So,
choose what cards are gonna get touched?
so for me, stylistically, I like really, really incremental balance because we like do a lot of live balance updates. I don't like to do too many sharp changes, if at all possible. So I like small changes. Um, so I just don't like to kick any decks out of the meta if we can avoid it. So that's probably like my first stop. Um, like mostly I like changes, small changes, partially because sometimes, especially with cards, like if you make a few radical changes or multiple buffs in the same package or multiple nerfs in the same package, it's a little hard to anticipate what's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
to the meta,
Mm-hmm.
like what the consequences will be. So I kind of prefer moving a bit slow and a bit small. Um, like that said, the whole point of doing it is, there's probably some decks that people are seeing too much of. They're a little frustrating, either in terms of people feel like they can't interact with them, or maybe the win rate's too high. We have different sort of metrics for what's too much, basically. So, uh, you do have to make shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And the tricky part on our side is it's pretty easy to over and undershoot, for these things, especially when uh, the card has an easy replacement, for example. And this was really true before rotation, where there was aggro packages that we just had to sort of let stay on fire,
Yeah.
more or less.
You
They were
turn rear
probably too
guard
good.
piles.
They were
Yeah.
probably too good, but it didn't matter. Like, let's say we hit three of the cards. Like, there's three waiting to go in that were just like, 90% as good, right? Like, there was nothing we could, it was very difficult to touch.
Yeah.
Which rotation really eased a lot of that pressure up on some of that stuff, especially for the smaller cards, because there aren't that many knobs and dials to turn on those cards. Frequently any movement is like they're too good or dead.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and also, we have a really talented team and a bunch of people who like to play. So there's like a lot of people. Like probably one of the strengths of our team is our ability to balance
Yeah.
card games, but the lore community is huge. So even regardless of how good any individuals of us are, we are we are a small little island in the ocean,
Yeah.
relative to the lore
Battling a
community. So
collective mind, but the lore team is really good. I like. We see a lot of people play ladder at the highest rank. Lore
yeah, yeah,
developers post print screens of themselves in the front page of the leaderboard very frequently, and I think that's great. I think I really like it when developers play their game to a very good
yeah.
extent. Like, how do you think it's like an advantage that you guys get to play at a high level to understand the meta and like
Oh, it's
understand
it's
changes?
tremendous. Yeah, it's a tremendous advantage. Like when I play like a lot of times I'll play live and I'll like play the meta decks just to get a feel for the matchups. That's another thing that really helps for balance. Like because like unless you're, it's hard to know what to target. Like generally speaking, when we're balancing, occasionally it'll be obvious that a card is just too far. Some there's just cards that are just clearly too good. But a lot of times what we're after is decks. And because it's the decks are what we have the numbers on, and that's what we're looking to sort of shift around a little bit in the meta. And I feel like unless I actually play a bit on ladder and see how people are playing these decks and see what the matchups are like, it's hard to know what cards to target in there that hit a deck at the right, it keeps the deck alive but takes away that, like, 1 or 2% edge that's like what's driving it to be like, a 56 or 57 deck, where we would
Mm-hmm.
prefer it to be like 52, 53 or something like that. So being able to target cards, I feel like it's really important that at least some of us are playing competitively. Otherwise, we won't know which cards are are the targets.
Yeah, the
You
center
kind of need
point.
some experience there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have some numbers on the individual cards, but it's very bound up with the decks. So I think it's super hard to target cards unless you're actually playing. And fortunately, a lot of people are playing. So sometimes people will be an expert in a deck, and they'll be able to vouch for this is what's strong, this is what's not. This would be what would probably be. So insofar as we're accurate, it's crucial that that at least some of us are playing at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, like, honestly, for me, I just get better every time I like like grind ladder.
Bro,
You know,
you've been getting better. You are improving.
I think I'm just good at the Nidalee deck.
Bro, you're the creator of the deck. You popularized it.
Yeah, it doesn't help. It doesn't matter much. Sometimes I have to, but but yeah, no. For some reason, I think I used to play poker. I made a small living at that, and so I think
Mm.
the bluffing in the Nidalee deck it suits me.
Yeah, these ambushes every
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. It suits me to be able to bluff. I get to use another skill. So, but who knows? Maybe I'm just getting lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, it's really important for us to play, and get a like when you and the other thing is, like, I know exactly where I'm at, right? Like in terms of, like, I'm kind of like a low to mid-level masters player. So I kind of know what my percentage should be with a like a good but not tier 0 deck or something like that. So when
Mhm.
I have the top deck and I'm just like cruising, at like 80, 90% through like, whatever, you know, platinum or something, it's like, oh god, this
Eh,
is just way too good. You know.
You're just built different,
Whereas,
man.
yeah, yeah. So I can use myself as a metric for the power because I
Mhm.
know, I know where I'm this good a player, so
And
that's
like
helpful for me.
you mentioned, like the rotation was very big, and like removing some tools for like from like region combinations to just replace cards in decks, so like these decks remain in the meta for too long. For example, like pirates.
Right,
So like, but I mean, every game has good decks and bad decks. But like,
right.
how long how long is too long for a deck to be good? For example, like
You
Aatrox
know,
Vayne
yeah.
or
I mean,
Hybrid Jace.
yeah, Higher Jace is a toughie. Like, it's sort of tricky. I mean, to some extent, we're kind of playing, paying attention to sentiment. There's also things like you can look at like the numbers of times people see a match and quit,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
right? Like in terms of data.
you guys have access to like this data where like
Yeah,
how many
we got
people
all kinds of
quit
numbers.
after
Yeah,
playing against a specific deck?
yeah, yeah. I mean that's interesting too, because that won't be necessarily a ranked thing, but
Uh
like
huh.
people just do not want to play against this thing, right? Like, so there's some level of frustration, or so there's lots of different ways that we'll start to sense this. Some of it's social, so, but I think like there's no like hard and fast cutoff. I think for a deck, it's like it's not like we go in guns blazing usually
Mm-hmm.
for somebody. Like, it's just, I think, usually, like, it's been there too long is an argument that comes up as like maybe like more of a tertiary argument for us. Like we're looking whether we're trying, we're really torn on whether we should make a change. That might be like the final decider or something. But it's rare that we just decide, okay, that's you've had your time in the sun, whoever, it's time we're gonna put the screws to you. I don't remember ever doing that particularly. Like, like it's but most of it is most of it is just the same way we go after anything. Like it's just like, is the play rate too high? Is the win rate too high? I mean, the other thing that we're also concerned with is like that champion just blocking every other champion in the region, right? Like you're only playing one one champion from that region. That's not a good sign, right?
Yeah.
That's a really not a good sign. So that means that almost certainly we need to buff some of the others up or take that one down a little, especially if it's overperforming on the rest of the metrics. So if we see that, like no one ever people play a lot of Noxus, but they only play like Samira or something, like like this is alarming, and down a couple levels, right? We want to make sure. I mean, really, especially for me, but I think for a lot of us, the dream is to have as many viable options and ways into the game as you can. That so it's your imagination that's limiting you, not just there's just a couple of ways through this card pool to success. So I like to push for a wider, as wide as possible, without it just being like everything's even.
Yeah, and I think lore is very successful because like every meta we have a bunch of pretty decent decks, like a few good decks. Sometimes we have like a
Yeah.
tier zero deck, a very good deck, but the diversity is always very high. Like, and I feel like the team accomplishes this very frequently. But like it
Yeah.
begs the question: Do you personally do you like buffing or nerfing cards? Like, would you rather buff a card or nerf a card?
That's an interesting question. Do I like buffing or nerfing? So, um, wow, that's an interesting question. I would say I probably prefer nerfing, believe it or not. And it's not, I think, like it's just, and it's the reason is just because of like, if I told you the dream is just sort of the trying to get as many things viable as possible.
Mhm.
A really well placed nerf, assuming it doesn't like kick the deck out, but like opens the door for a lot of other stuff to come in. So I feel like the nerfs, like really good nerfs, like open up more space than really good buffs. Because really good buffs usually like that's, although sometimes like what happens is, I don't know if you remember, like Banel has entered the game extremely strong,
Yeah,
right? Then we just cut Banel way back, right? Just because it was monolithic.
I mean,
And then
Telescope
we
was
just,
something else.
yeah, tell a lot of cards. So, and then Vandal was just like buried. And so then there's just like every patch we'd buff like 2 or 3 Vandal cards, and nothing was moving really. But like, eventually there was enough power that we got back into Vandal that when we would buff up like one card, it woke up all the other buff cards, and suddenly you could play some viable Vandal strategies. Also, we released Nora, you know, but sometimes too it's like there's like a bit of a fashion even in the community, like internally we thought, for example, Tristana was very good for a long time. So we really
And
did not understand why people weren't playing
yeah,
her.
and people were
We
saying
made a
Tristana
very
was the
small
worst
change to
champion in
her.
the game. Yeah.
Yeah, we made a very small change to her, and suddenly all the people realized that
Yes,
Tristana was
sometimes
very
all you need
strong.
is like a placebo buff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just sort of pointing our finger at Tristana. Look, try it.
Oh,
you know
still on the topic of rotation.
yeah.
I don't know if you can talk about this, but like, uh, is there a chance that cars that got rotated are ever coming back? Like, just the
I
possibility.
think this was promised to you that we would move things in and out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I certainly think it's really cool if cars can go in and out. So yeah, I
Great.
believe so. Yeah.
Um.
So I mean, I think if you just think of like it's kind of it's sometimes now when we think about moving cars in and out of Eternal, I sometimes think about the extra excitement that card will have when Eternal Season rolls around, and you can now play it with the stuff that's just releasing or something. Like there is some uh joy to that too, so sometimes we'll move things
Yeah.
there because there are treasures there. When you get to open the Eternal box, you're like, oh, you can't wait to try this deck out or something
My
like that.
my
So
first
that's
game
also
of my first game of every Eternal season is Seraphine Bandle City because I just love Pokestick. All right, let's divert from balance and like just let's just talk about like games. What's your favorite game
okay.
outside of lore?
Outside of lore, so probably my favorite game of all time outside of lore is Bloodborne,
Oh,
which
Bloodborne.
is yeah, yeah. So I played a lot of Bloodborne. A lot of Bloodborne. I played a lot of Bloodborne PvP.
Oh.
So this is one of the few games I've actually been probably like for that kind of game that I was good. So like I was probably a top player, but like the bottom of the top. There's lots of players that are
Mhm.
way that I could just never beat.
I
But I still was a pretty good player when I was playing a lot. So
I've heard you're a big From Software fan.
I am. It's true. Yeah, I am. Just in general, I'm not the only one on the team either. There's lots of us actually.
Have you played
Uh,
the new game, the mecha game?
I have Armored Core. Yeah, I have. I really enjoy it. I've been super busy. I just got two new puppies, or I got a dog and a puppy, and I'm like kind of busy at work, so like I haven't finished it, but it's really really fun. Yeah, it's yeah. I really like Armored Core. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I like
okay.
almost all Front games.
It's a I think like I have no context about game design, but like I really wanted to
Mhm.
ask this question. Is there
Yeah,
is there like a mechanic from like a different game, from a different genre that you've ever like had an epiphany that would turn out great in a card game?
yeah. It's funny. I actually think everyone borrows from card games more than we borrow from
Oh,
everyone
really?
else. Yeah, sure. Like if you think about it, like cards are one of the few places where you have a rule set and then the individual pieces tweak or break that rule set in different ways. And I feel like that, and really here probably Magic's the big influence, but I think
Hmm.
that has influenced the way a lot of people design other games. Like if you think about something like like From is a big inspiration to me for my design work, but it's not the specifics of their mechanics. It's more about their style of design. It's like, and what they're good at. And what they're good at, people think of From really just in terms of the difficulty or it's like very challenging. But what From's really good at is evoking emotion. That is like their superpower, right?
Hmm.
Like really like uh, Bloodborne is very good at scaring you, and not like a shock jump scare sort of way. Like you just feel like scared about the things that you're going to have to encounter. And the boss fights are like that too, where you just be massively intimidated initially. And so their ability to evoke feeling, not even just with the mechanics, but even with they have used a brilliant use of music and ambient sounds, all this stuff really good at evoking emotion. I actually think this is part of the reason I love From, but this is I think the most important thing in game design. I really think that's what I'm doing when I'm doing game design is evoking emotion. That's like
Hmm.
what I'm after. So like when I design cards, especially like champions, I want them to kind of feel alive and have a style and like evoke, maybe it's evoking frustration, So like, when Steve and I were designing Akshan, like what I wanted Akshan to be is to feel like this like sort of Indiana Jones character where you would, like you thought you get him, but he'd come back. He's like really like he's like somewhere between like annoying and brash, like the way he turned out actually.
I really love this insight because Akshan is a champion that provokes emotion. Some people really love him, some
Yeah,
people really
yeah,
hate him. And like Akshan on 2 is a meme. It is a real meme. But like it shows in like the designs for like Jace. Like you have the hammer stance, you have the cannon stance, and like challenger quick attack. And literally
yeah.
she morphs and everything. I think it's really cool. Um, these these things that like you get inspiration from other styles. I
Yeah,
love this feeling. But like
yeah,
you talked about being like a highly competitive Bloodborne player. Bringing that to
yeah.
lore,
I don't know about that. Huh? What's that?
bringing this competitiveness to lore. Have you ever thought about like playing on a tournament? Like like
Oh,
the
yeah. It
team?
turns out, yeah, we can't play in anything that has prizes. Unfortunately, I think that a number of our number of our devs would be all over tournaments if we could.
Oh
But we can't play with anything. Yeah, unfortunately, we can't play with anything as a prize. So, but for any for fun tournament, I'm sure we could jump in.
yeah, because like
I don't know.
like since everyone in the team is so good at lore, like I wonder like do you do like internal tournaments or anything?
We have in the past had like internal tournaments. Uh, but there's even some of the like I think one of them an engineer one who's also was also quite a good player. So something it's not even just the not even just the designers. Like there's other good players too. But yeah, no, I love it when we have internal tournaments. I kind of want to do one. We were talking about maybe doing one for what we're working on now because they're really it's like people when you're competing for something, you people try much harder. You bring better decks. It's always good.
Yeah,
So that part's really fun.
because like I was having like a bunch of ideas for like creating content, and one of the ideas that I had was like inviting a bunch of rioters for like a for fun show match. So like we get five Brazilians against five rioters and like make them clash.
Yeah, just talk to people. I bet you we could make it happen. I mean, certainly everybody loves to play. Yeah, as
Mhm.
long as long as there's no like money on the line, in
No,
any
there's
way, right?
only
We can do it. Yeah.
pride and glory.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, just see if you can hook it up. I would definitely play.
All right. Well, let's not like keep you too long. We've been 45
Uh-huh.
minutes. Let's do like a bit of final touches. One thing that I really wanted to ask you. Everyone
Uh-huh.
on the team has been like extremely receptive to feedback. They've been interacting on social
Right,
media, on Reddit, on Twitter,
right.
and like I think the community has done great. Uh, but however, I've seen sometimes people go a little bit over the line. And like I wanted to ask you as like a developer and as a person what we
Right.
as a community could do like to make it better and like to be even more welcoming to like developers like
Uh, so we're really lucky with this community. I see how my other friends who are developers can live. So I don't want to complain in any way. In all honesty, like so, I think a lot of it is just being respectful. Everyone on the team, I think, genuinely wants with all their heart for when we release stuff for people to enjoy it. That is really our aim. We put a lot of work into it. It's okay if people don't like something. It's okay if people have specific criticisms. That's actually, honestly, that can be very good for us.
mhm.
And there's lots of people who have a very good understanding of the game that we can learn from that are, in the world or commentators or any of these things. So I'm happy for all that information. It's really just being respectful, and not being, not, uh, you know, uh, but I feel like mostly that's what we get, and a lot of times if people aren't, I sometimes think it's their own pain that's talking. I'm not usually too worried about it.
All right.
Usually they're suffering in some way. It's like we don't see that much of that, fortunately. But yeah, if just in terms of advice, yeah, just be respectful. We're happy to engage. The more that you're just respectful, certainly we're open to criticism and we're open to suggestion. But the more that you're just respectful, that we do care and we are really trying for you as best we can. I think that's the only thing we really need on our
Yeah.
end. About
Great.
just honest feedback. All that's good.
That's great to know. So like let's get over we're near the end. I wanted to do a quick game.
Okay.
let's do like I'm gonna give you a phrase and you're gonna respond with the first word that comes to your mind.
Okay, we'll
Let's
try
do a
this.
little bit of a game. All right. A
Sure, sure,
champion.
sure. Uh,
A
Akshay,
champion. Okay. A follower.
Akshay, Follower. Wow. My mind
There's so
completely blank.
many.
A follower. Clockling.
Oh, the clockling. Okay, what's the best
Yeah.
region?
That's best region. Boy, I don't want to get in trouble. Like, what's my? I'll answer my favorite region. Um, Here's my favorite region. My favorite region is probably Shurima.
All right. What's the country with the best players?
Oh boy, you're really trying to get me in trouble now. I'll say because of present company. Obviously, it's Brazil. I mean, come
I
on.
mean, of course, it's a rap.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
dogs or cats?
Ah, dogs.
Your favorite food?
Um, Olive oil.
Olive oil. Nice. Your
Quite
favorite
literally.
your favorite
I,
drink?
I mean, it's not chocolate. Chocolate's another big one for me. But yeah, yeah, we went to Italy last Christmas, and ever since then, my wife and I we've been cooking a lot with olive oil. Also, my family, my family is like I'm half Greek, so like yeah, you ask a Greek person what their favorite food is, it's going to be olive oil.
Yeah,
They like
I've
lemon.
been all over your food ventures on Twitter. I love him. Please keep us posted. So,
Yeah, we'll do.
a favorite drink?
Um, like alcoholic drink,
Any drink.
any drink. White wine,
Day or night?
night,
Sun or rain?
rain.
Pokemon or Digimon?
I feel like I should say Digimon, but I don't know enough about Digimon, so I'm gonna say Pokemon.
Okay. All right. It's 4:50. Let's not keep you to ourselves. Do you wanna say anything before we wrap this up?
No, 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 no. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's always great to talk to you. No, but I don't have anything extra special to say.
You've been great. I think the lore team has been great. Especially like recently with all these communication. I think you guys do a great job at like just taking
I
care of the
appreciate
game
it.
we love. So like, I really wanted to give you my appreciations. Thank you. Thanks to the lore team. Thanks to you
Yeah.
for coming to Brazil. You officially came to Brazil. You're. I will
Yeah,
one day personally in like when we have uh in-house worlds and everything. I'll be there. I'll make you
yeah, yeah.
feijoada. I'll make you like some
All
Brazilian
right.
dishes. I can't wait. Thank you for coming
That's,
here. I
that's great.
really
Thank you.
appreciate the opportunity, and I'll. I guess we'll have to talk about that 5v5 show match.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Get in touch with people. I'd definitely be down to do it. All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you
Talk
everyone
to you
for
soon.
coming. I will wrap this up and